Welcome back. We are diving deep today into really the core machinery of professional practice.
The real nuts and bolts.
Exactly. We're exploring the blueprint for firms that, actually thrive by minimizing mistakes and maximizing predictability.
Which is the name of the game, really.
It is. We're tackling a critical segment of practice management, or PcM, and it's all drawn from the professional practices of KING-KAMBUF's architecture design studios.
Specifically, Issue 9.
That's the one. Standardizing QA/QC across the firm.
It sounds dry, but this is where firms live or die.
It really is. And for you listening, the mission of this deep dive is, I think, absolutely clear. It goes way beyond just making nice design decisions.
Oh, way beyond.
We're focused on building a reliable, a repeatable quality system.
A mechanism.
Yes, a mechanism that's tough enough to absorb the shock of, say, impossible deadlines, the staff turnover that always happens mid-project.
The worst time.
Always. And the massive variety of different project types that cross your desk. This is fundamentally about risk management.
And practice-wide delivery of services.
Right. The ultimate goal, as KING-KAMBUF defines it, is setting up your firm to consistently meet the standard of care.
Every single time.
Every single time. And by doing that, you drastically reduce your avoidable exposure and, well, you secure the firm's long-term financial health.
And that phrase you just used, the standard of care, that is the fixed point of this whole discussion. It is the yardstick you are legally measured against.
Okay.
And what we see in practice, and what so often compromises a firm's defensibility, is a confusing, just simple effort with strategic execution.
Working hard isn't the same as working smart.
Not at all. Professionals, they tend to mix up the two critical sides of quality, and that distinction is, it's our immediate foundation for this whole talk.
Okay, let's unpack that then. This is the crucial difference, the core concept that often gets completely muddled in the chaos of a project delivery.
It really does.
Quality assurance versus quality control. On the surface, it just sounds like semantics, but the material insists it's the key difference between running a successful, profitable practice.
And living in a constant state of frantic scramble.
Exactly.
It is literally the difference between prevention and damage control. You should think of this distinction as the #1 liability trap in architectural practice.
So let's start with QA. What is it exactly?
QA, or quality assurance, is the system you build to stop problems from happening.
It's proactive.
100% proactive.
Yeah.
We're talking about the firm's entire organizational structure. It's the documented standards, the BIM templates, the standardized specs.
The training programs, the checklists.
All of it. And crucially, the overall review culture that you foster in the firm. QA's whole purpose is to prevent defects from ever being created in the first place.
So QA is like the preventative maintenance on your car.
Perfect analogy.
They're doing the oil changes and checking the tires to make sure the engine never seizes up on the freeway.
Precisely. And if QA is that preventative system, then QC, or quality control, is the actual checking mechanism.
This is the reactive side.
This is the damage assessment. It's the red lines you put on a sheet, the structured peer reviews you run, the clash detection analysis between the different disciplines.
With sheet audits right before you hit plot.
Exactly. QC's purpose is, very simply, to find defects that somehow manage to slip past your established QA system.
And the material is so clear on this point. Real risk reduction doesn't come from just better, harder QC efforts.
No.
That's so often treated as that desperate, exhausting, heroic red line sprint we've all pulled at 3 in the morning the night before, a huge deadline.
We've all been there.
And that sprint is just pure inefficiency.
It's worse than inefficient. It is actively dangerous. That heroic sprint is, well, it's unsustainable, it's incredibly stressful for your staff, and it's guaranteed to miss major emissions.
Why is that?
Just due to exhaustion and cognitive bias. You simply can't effectively QC your own work after staring at it for 100 hours.
You see what you expect to see.
You do. The critical takeaway here is that successful, high-functioning firms don't just rely on heroic QC. They invest heavily, and I mean heavily, in standardized QA.
The reliable templates, the mandatory gates, the training.
Right. That investment makes the necessary QC process faster, cheaper, and just far more consistent. If your system ensures the sheet numbering is already standardized.
Or the keynotes are tied to a vetted detail library.
And the accessibility report is started on day 1, then your QC team is focused entirely on complex coordination issues, not chasing basic formatting errors.
That's risk mitigation powered by process.
That's it, exactly.
That distinction naturally leads us right into the whole issue of liability. Because Let's face it, when a firm ends up in legal trouble, it's not because the client didn't like the paint color.
Rarely, if ever.
It's almost always related to a failure to meet that standard of care we talked about, which, ultimately stems from predictable, avoidable process failures.
Always process.
So if we're focusing on risk management, we need to understand exactly how a firm's exposure grows in the first place.
It grows primarily through two things: unchecked variance and the neglect of your own established internal procedures.
Right.
KING-KAMBUF identifies four very practical pathways where liability accrues, and every single one of them links back to failures of systemic quality assurance.
And understanding these is the first step toward building a defense.
It is.
So what's the first most dangerous thing a PM can do that instantly compromises a firm's defensibility?
Number one is absolutely crucial: deviating from the firm's normal practice without documenting why.
So going rogue.
Essentially, architects are measured against the standard of care of their peers, right? Peers. But they are also measured against their own internal standard.
Okay, that's a key point.
It's huge. If your firm's documented standard operating procedure is to run a clash detection review and a life safety code analysis at the 60% DD milestone,
Right.
and a project manager skips that step on one project because they wanted to save fee or make up time,
They've just created a massive liability gap.
instantly. If a coordination issue, or worse, a code violation comes up later, your defense is severely compromised because you failed to follow your own established, documented standard.
That deviation basically suggests negligence.
It screams negligence. You've essentially lowered your own bar for that single project. The court asks, what was your standard? And you show them your QA manual.
Then they ask, did you follow it?
And if the answer is no, the liability clock just starts ticking.
Okay, what's pathway number 2? The material mentions technical content.
Yes. Allowing a PM or a project architect to freestyle details, specs, or code narratives.
So this is where that tribal knowledge becomes a massive risk.
A huge risk. Every professional wants to innovate, that's natural. But if that innovation means a PA is drawing a custom, one-off roof assembly detail that hasn't been vetted by a technical peer,
Or added to the firm's detail library.
or coordinated with current product specs, it introduces a totally unmanaged risk.
And that's not just details, right?
No. Every time a team writes custom Division 01 language, which are the rules of the game for the contractor, or they invent a new code narrative approach, they're essentially running an expensive, untested experiment on the client's dime.
Which is not what they're paying for.
Not at all. Standardizing those core elements is vital because vetted details and specs are, by definition, lower risk than something you sketched for the first time on a tight deadline.
And the next 2 points are really about procedural discipline.
They are. The first is skipping milestone reviews, SDDDCD, or treating them as optional.
Which happens all the time to save time.
All the time. But you simply cannot view milestone reviews as optional. They are non-negotiable gates.
Why so rigid?
Because they represent the last best opportunity to catch conceptual errors, like a deficient egress strategy, before they get fully baked into the document set.
And once they're baked in.
The cost to fix them increases exponentially the later you find them. It's that simple. If you skip a major review, you are letting expensive errors fester.
And the final point is related.
It is. Keeping tribal knowledge in people's heads instead of in a playbook. We touched on this, but it's the enemy of continuity.
The hero architect problem.
Exactly. When your most experienced staff member leaves, their undocumented knowledge, that special way they coordinate structural loads or their custom waterproofing detail, it just vanishes.
Creating a massive risk exposure across all their old projects.
And their ongoing ones. You need a playbook, a system that codifies that experience so it belongs to the firm, not just the individual.
So if those are the dangers, how does the act of standardization directly counter these liabilities? How does it improve our defensibility when a claim does, inevitably arise?
Standardization creates an undeniable paper trail of due diligence.
The evidence.
It provides the evidence that you executed due care. We see 4 specific, really powerful benefits. First, and we've said this, but it's worth repeating, it reduces variance.
Fewer one-off decisions.
Exactly. If you reduce the number of unique decisions made per project, meaning if 80% of your construction details come from a previously vetted, approved, and dated firm library,
then you reduce the probability of introducing an untested risk.
you do. And you can focus your risk mitigation resources on the challenging 20% of custom work, not the boilerplate.
And reducing that variance must have huge implications for consultant coordination.
Oh, Absolutely. That is the second benefit. Improving coordination.
How so?
Well, if the firm uses consistent sheet layouts, standardized keynote tags that mean the same thing from project to project, and consistent BIM or CAD parameters,
Then everyone is speaking the same language.
precisely, it ensures that when the structural engineer references an architectural section, the project architect knows exactly what that reference means and what spec section is linked to it. It just minimizes ambiguity.
And that prevents those costly clashes that come from inconsistent documentation.
It does. Now, the third benefit focuses squarely on the legal angle.
Creating defensible process evidence.
This is the critical link between your internal QA and legal due care. This is the paperwork that becomes your best friend in a courtroom.
Review logs, checklists.
Documented checklists, mandatory sign-offs, clear records proving that you executed due diligence according to a professional standard. These are non-negotiables.
So if a client sues, you don't argue about aesthetics.
No, you point to the quality of the process. You demonstrate that by following your own systematic procedures, you follow the industry's standard of care. This documentation is your liability insurance policy in paper form.
And finally, the benefit that really hits the bottom line the hardest.
Cutting omissions.
Things just left out.
Simple as that. Things that were just left out of the drawings or specifications are the most dangerous fuel for financial conflict.
This is what drives RFIs and change orders.
They are the #1 driver. RFIs quickly devolve into change orders, disputes, and ultimately expensive E&O claims.
And omissions don't happen because someone doesn't know the answer.
Rarely. They happen because, under stress, someone forgot to check the complex interface between two systems, say, the connection between the curtain wall framing and the structural slat edge.
A systematic QA/QC program flags those interfaces proactively.
It makes forgetting virtually impossible. By cutting omissions, you stabilize project budgets, you protect the schedule, and you massively improve the trust relationship with your client.
Okay, so we've established the necessity, it reduces liability, and it seems it actively generates profit. Now let's get into the mechanics.
How?
The how. The material breaks down the 4 non-negotiable building blocks you need to move away from ad hoc, chaotic quality management to a structured, firm-wide program.
The 4 pillars.
The 4 pillars: templates, checklists, peer reviews, and governance.
And they have to be integrated. You can't just pick one. Trying to implement, say, just templates without the other 3, it's a recipe for failure.
How so?
Well, if you only have templates, you have great content, but no enforcement mechanism. If you only have reviews, you're constantly playing catch-up and spending hours reviewing basic mistakes that should have been prevented.
They have to work as a system.
As a complete system.
Okay, let's start with templates. This is about establishing a reliable starting line for every single project, for every staff member.
Right.
The philosophy here is to make the right thing the path of least resistance.
Make it the easiest choice.
If it's easier to use the vetted firm standard than it is to create something new from scratch, staff will use the standard.
Hopefully.
So what does a comprehensive template system need to include
Yeah.
beyond just, a standard title block and a logo?
It has to incorporate the institutional intelligence of the firm. It has to be smart. First, you need granular sheetless standards tailored by project type.
So not one size fits all.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You must define the core set of drawings, the absolute minimum required for a multifamily project versus, say, a commercial retail fit-out, plus all the required add-on sheets for complexity.
And that prevents teams from just forgetting a critical sheet.
Exactly. It stops them from forgetting things like specialized equipment plans, dedicated fire-stopping details, or comprehensive door schedules just because the PA was new or distracted. That omission is that $9,000 mistake we're going to talk about.
Standardizing the informational content is also huge, especially the details and specs.
Oh, that's absolutely vital. You must have a robust, integrated keynote system, plus a curated, dated, typical detail library.
What does dated mean here?
It means if your library has hundreds of details, you need an internal mechanism to make sure the team is using the latest vetted version. The details have to be dated, often with a revision log right inside the detail itself.
And someone has to own that library.
Critically, a technical owner, the standards keeper, must be assigned to that library. That person has to continuously coordinate updates, especially when codes change or a product fails on site.
And that prevents 10-year-old details from polluting current projects.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about specs? That's the thing that often gets left until the final few weeks of CDs. How do we standardize that proactively?
That procrastination is a massive, massive risk. You need spec starter sections and standardized Division 01 baseline language.
Why Division 01 specifically?
Because Division 01 governs the process of construction. It's the legal framework. It sets coordination requirements, submittals, schedules, closeout expectations.
It's the rules of the game.
It is. If every PM writes their own Division 001, you have 20 different project standards floating around, which is indefensible in court.
Standardizing the baseline language ensures legal and procedural consistency.
And it guarantees the firm asks for the same necessary documentation like warranties and operations manuals on every single job.
And finally, the foundational risk management document. Code compliance.
Yes, the standard code analysis worksheet. This isn't just a piece of paper you print for the permit set. It has to be a living document that starts on day one of schematic design.
What goes on it?
It has to cover occupancy classification, construction type, required fire ratings, egress capacity concepts, and all the key accessibility checkpoints. Starting the project with this template ensures that critical, irreversible decisions,
Like where the main stairs go.
or defining the building area, or required fire separations, all those things are logged, tracked, and coordinated rather than being guessed at later.
Okay, that brings us to checklists. These are often seen as bureaucratic overhead.
A necessary evil at best.
All right, but they're actually a gift to the staff when they're under pressure. The emphasis here is on the purpose. Don't rely on human memory under stress or when staff are overloaded.
We use checklists because inevitably human memory fails, and it always fails at the worst possible time.
So checklists force resolution.
They do. They transform a vague, unmanageable obligation like make sure the code is met into a set of discrete, actionable tasks.
Like verify clear width at all door swings meets the required accessibility standard.
Precisely. But they have to be structured correctly. The standard mandates that they must be built by milestone and discipline.
Serving as concrete milestone gates.
Exactly. Gates that have to be signed off before you can move to the next phase.
Let's detail those gates. How does the checklist evolve from schematic design to construction documents?
Okay, so SD is purely about conceptual resolution. The SD checklist focuses on the big picture issues that would require foundational, expensive rework if you miss them.
Such as?
Items like program adjacencies confirming incompatible functions aren't side by side, solidifying the life safety concept, stair counts, fire separation boundaries.
The big moves.
The big moves. Locking down the envelope concept. Are we using continuous insulation or cavity walls, and does the consultant agree? And critically, confirming consultant's scope alignment.
Meaning, does the structural engineer know we expect a post-tension slab analysis, and have they budgeted for it?
You got it. You have to get that stuff locked down early.
Then by design development, or DD, we're locking down the technical systems. The checklist has to reflect that granular commitment.
At DD, the checklist is all about ensuring resolution, not concept. We need confirmation that major system selections are locked, HVAC unit types, elevator dimensions.
Structural grids are clear and coordinated with the architecture.
So no columns clashing with window placements. All rated assemblies are diagrammed, showing the fire ratings and smoke partitions, and the shaft strategy is resolved.
Meaning, where do all the ducts and pipes and systems actually penetrate the rated floors and walls?
Exactly. Skipping these items pushes massive, unavoidable coordination problems into the CD phase, and that is financial suicide because those changes start impacting consultant fees and the schedule.
And then the final phase, construction documents. The CD checklist is about pure internal consistency,
It's the internal cross-audit.
making sure the drawings talk to each other correctly.
Right. Key items here are extremely granular. Door hardware rating alignment. Does the door schedule actually match the plan's fire rating designation? Verifying reflected ceiling coordination. Are all the major light fixtures and sprinkler heads accounted for relative to the structure?
Confirming the penetration strategy.
Are fire stopping details included and referenced? And ensuring that all schedules reconcile with the plan's window pipes. Room finish schedules must match what's shown on the floor plans.
And if that list isn't complete and signed off...
The documents are simply not ready to issue, period.
Okay, so we've used the templates to start correctly and the checklist to guide the work. But we still need fresh, unbiased eyes.
Always.
This is where the often mismanaged peer review comes in. And this isn't about the PM quickly asking a friend to glance over the drawings for a favor.
No, that is not a peer review.
The material stresses that peer reviews must be mandatory, scheduled, and time-boxed. They're a non-negotiable step in the QA process.
The structure is everything. Peer reviews have to be role-based to maximize efficiency and catch different types of errors.
What do you mean by role-based?
You don't want a coordination expert spending all their time checking code compliance. You want them focused on interfaces. You need specialists.
Okay, let's break down the 3 required roles and their specific focus areas, starting with the technical peer.
This person is the firm's compliance guardian. Their job is to minimize legal risk by verifying adherence to external standards and internal best practices.
So they're looking at code.
They're focused on life safety, accessibility, and the correct application of typical details. They check the code narrative against the plans, they ensure accessible parking counts are correct, and they verify that standard wall sections are appropriately linked to the spec section for continuous air and water barriers.
They are the compliance firewall.
Perfectly put.
Next, the coordination peer. This one seems like the most general, but maybe the most critical for cutting down on RFIs.
It is critical for internal integrity. Their job is to verify plan section elevation consistency. Do the dimensions align? Is the exterior cladding shown in the elevation actually matching the corresponding wall section detail?
They're also looking for consultant clashes.
Yes, the ones that standard software might miss, like ductwork running through a structural beam that wasn't explicitly modeled as a clash, and they track sheet-to-sheet cross-referencing.
Making sure detail 5 on sheet A4.2 actually exists.
And is correctly drawn and is not a phantom reference from a previous project.
And the third role, the constructability peer. This is essential for managing the contractor relationship and budget stability.
This peer is often a senior architect or a construction administrator who understands how things are physically put together in the field.
They're looking at it from the builder's perspective.
Exactly. They focus on reducing contractor risk and minimizing change orders that are driven by ambiguity. They look at practical realities.
Yeah.
Sequences. Can the contractor actually install the framing before the slab is poured?
Tolerances. Can that custom detail actually achieve the 1/8 inch tolerance you specified?
And, critically, waterproofing continuity. Is the air and water barrier continuous at every single penetration and change in material? And they verify spec drawing alignment.
Does the drawing show wood blocking, where the spec requires expensive steel supports?
You got it. Catching a constructability error here saves hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars in the field later.
Okay, now for the administrative piece, but arguably the most important one, governance.
The ownership problem.
Yes. As we noted, quality programs often launch with a lot of enthusiasm, only to quietly fail because they were deemed everyone's responsibility.
Which is the kiss of death.
It is.
That phrase is just management code for no accountability. A QA/QC program is a long-term strategic asset, and assets require dedicated, budgeted ownership.
So you have to assign mandatory, non-negotiable roles for this to succeed.
Absolute.
Role number 1, the standards keeper.
This is an individual or a small team, and they are the custodian of the firm's knowledge base. They're responsible for maintaining the library, updating the templates, and managing version control.
So they make sure everyone's using the right detail.
They ensure that when a new detail is approved, the old superseded version is permanently archived, and teams only have access to the single authoritative source. And crucially, they need to be given the time and budget to keep this resource current.
It can't be a side gig.
It cannot be a secondary duty performed after hours. If the standards keeper fails, the entire firm reverts to dangerous freestyling.
Role number 2, the QA/QC lead.
This is the high-level process manager for the entire firm. They're responsible for establishing the review protocols, maintaining the firm's audit schedule, and overseeing firm-wide training.
So they own the system itself.
They do. They ensure the peer review system is functioning, that time is allocated for it, and that all firm checklists reflect the latest code cycles and lessons learned from past projects. They report directly to the principals on the health of the system.
And finally, the essential daily role, the project team QC captain.
Every single project needs this role assigned, tracked, and budgeted. This person is embedded within the project team.
What's their job?
Their specific duty is to track checklist completion and resolve review comments for that specific project. They are the internal project manager of quality.
They bridge the gap between the firm standard and the project execution.
Perfectly said. They're the ones who schedule the peer review, document the comments, and ensure the resolutions are incorporated back into the drawings before submission.
That structural division of labor is so key. And this brings us back to the material synthesis, the really powerful metaphor of the diagram in words.
The system visualization is what makes it sticky for management. It's how you sell it. You have to visualize the entire QA/QC process as a three-lane highway.
A highway designed to transport the project documents safely to the finish line.
Right. Lane 1 is the template lane. That's your guardrail of standard content. Lane 2 is the checklist lane. These are the non-negotiable milestone gates you have to pass through, forcing resolution before you can progress.
And lane 3 is the peer review lane.
The systematic, structured safety check run by disinterested, experienced professionals. Fresh eyes.
And the core goal is velocity and safety, keeping project teams moving forward without being stalled by late-game errors, or worse.
Drifting into oncoming traffic.
Which is defined as late surprises, massive omissions, or unreviewed scope changes that derail the project and expose the firm to unnecessary liability.
Exactly. Now, we need to address the central resistance point for every principal and project manager out there.
The money.
The money. The fear that spending time on checklists and peer reviews is just non-billable overhead that kills the profit margin.
And the data proves the exact opposite.
It does. Systemic QA/QC is not overhead. It is a leveraged investment that yields significant, measurable profit.
This is where the quantitative analysis from KING-KAMBUF, the board sketch, becomes the essential management tool.
It is. It provides the financial justification you need to make these systems mandatory.
Okay, let's walk through the assumptions step by step to make this argument undeniable.
We need two realistic baselines to start. First, a common firm average billing rate, which the analysis sets pretty conservatively at $150 per hour.
Okay, 150.
Second, a measurement of current inefficiency across the industry. The typical mid-size project suffers an estimated 60 hours of avoidable rework.
60 hours. And what is avoidable rework?
It's the time the PM, the PA, and the support staff spend frantically fixing coordination errors, writing emergency addenda, and sitting in meetings mitigating disputes that were caused by internal mistakes.
Mistakes that should have been caught much, much earlier.
Exactly.
So 60 hours of rework per project is significant. What's the actual financial cost of that leakage right now?
Well, that current cost is 60 hours multiplied by $150 an hour, which totals $9,000 in current rework costs per project.
Wow. $9,000.
$9,000. And that is directly taken out of the firm's projected profit and contingency. And remember, that calculation only uses the standard billing rate.
What's the real cost?
If you calculated that using the true overhead burden, including staff salary, benefits, office space, the intangible cost of lost opportunity, that $9,000 leakage would easily be $12,000 or more.
It's pure avoidable leakage.
That's all it is.
Okay, that cost is shocking, but it's also familiar to anyone who's been through a major CD phase panic.
Yeah.
Now, let's calculate the cost of the new QA/QC investment.
The proactive expense required to stop that panic.
Right.
The investment has two components, and both are small relative to the leakage. First, the ongoing cost of structured, mandatory peer reviews.
The time-boxed reviews.
The standard dictates a tight schedule, 2 hours at SD, 2 hours at DD, and 2 hours at CD, for a total of 6 hours per project.
So 6 hours times $150 an hour, that's $900.
$900. That is the direct build cost of prevention.
And the second component is amortizing the initial template and checklist creation work over the project pool.
Correct. We assume an initial investment of, say, 20 hours to create or thoroughly refresh the templates and checklists. If we spread that one-time cost over 10 typical projects.
That's an amortized cost of 2 hours per project.
Right. 2 hours multiplied by 150 is $300.
So the total QA/QC investment per project is $900 for the reviews plus $300 for the template amortization, which is a total proactive investment of $1,200.
$1,200. And here's the punchline. This is the profit moment. If your newly standardized QA/QC system is only successful enough to reduce that costly 60 hours of rework down to a far more manageable 10 hours per project,
You've saved 50 hours of panicked, unnecessary effort.
you have.
And 50 hours of saved effort multiplied by $150 an hour is $7,500 saved in rework cost.
And the resulting net benefit is therefore $7,500 saved minus the $1,200 invested, resulting in a $6,300 net profit per project.
$6,300.
Net profit. And that doesn't even include the additional intangible benefit of leveraging that documented process to negotiate lower professional liability insurance premiums.
Your E&O insurance.
Which is a massive concern for firm leadership. The analysis transforms QA/QC from a dreaded expense into a demonstrably reliable profit center.
That's the financial leverage needed to change firm culture. If you are a principal managing 20 projects a year, this system immediately generates over $120,000 in extra net profit.
Just by moving money from the leakage column to the prevention column.
Okay, let's ground this theory in a high-stakes, real-world case study. This scenario illustrates exactly what happens when the QA/QC system fails.
And more importantly, how a truly competent firm responds by fixing the system, not just the error.
So the project is complex, an urban 5-story mixed-use building.
Already tricky.
It involves Type 3 construction, that's combustible exterior walls, and Type IA, fire-resistant structure, hybrid zones.
That mix introduces extreme complexity in fire rating and structural requirements. The coordination has to be flawless.
It's got retail at grade, 48 residential units above, running under a tight schedule in a strict jurisdiction.
So they're demanding absolute accuracy on accessibility and life safety.
And it's design bid build, which maximizes the firm's exposure to contractor claims.
Of course it is.
So here's the problem scenario. We're dangerously late in the game at 90% CDs, when the contractor who is reviewing the documents for bidding flags 2 critical errors.
Errors that should have been caught months ago.
Months. First, several corridor doors swing inward, directly obstructing the required clear egress width at a major pinch point.
A severe life safety and accessibility violation. That's a showstopper.
And second, a rated wall line in the plans conflicts directly with the reflected ceiling plan, the RCP, which shows continuous non-rated ceiling openings just blasting right through that rated boundary.
A serious fire rating discontinuity. This is a classic systemic failure.
The owner is furious because the project is delayed and they feel the firm wasn't diligent.
Of course.
And the contractor, knowing they have leverage, immediately hints that these ambiguities will form the basis of a lucrative change order strategy.
They're going to make a fortune on this. The firm is now in maximum liability territory.
So, drawing on the KING-KAMBUF procedures, how does a competent architect execute the mandatory standard of care plus defensible process response? What's the first move?
You prioritize documentation and control. Step 1. Stop the bleed and document. Do not engage in verbal debate or blame shifting.
Get it in writing.
Immediately. The architect must create a formal QA/QC non-conformance log item documenting both the door swing issue and the rating continuity problem. Assign an owner from the project team, the QC captain, and give it an immediate, aggressive due date for resolution.
And that action establishes control and creates the record.
The critical record proving the firm is actively addressing the issue.
Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 requires using the structured system you already have in place. Run the targeted review sequence, you pull in the specific experts required.
So you get the life safety peer reviewer involved.
Immediately. They need to focus solely on egress widths, door swings relative to required clear paths, and the continuity of all rated assemblies from slab to slab.
And at the same time, the coordination peer reviewer.
Yes. They have to perform the necessary overlay check. RCP versus the life safety plan and the rated partitions, verifying that details referenced for the rated walls are consistent with the ceiling and floor penetration conditions.
And step 3 is the resolution.
Issue a targeted addendum. And this must be surgically clean.
No ambiguity.
None. Drawings are revised immediately, clearly clouded to highlight the change and described in a detailed narrative in the addendum.
What's in the addendum?
It clarifies the revised door swing strategies, which might require a hardware change or even relocating a door. It details the updated rated ceiling strategy, introducing required fire-rated bulkheads. And it ensures any corresponding spec section, like door hardware or fire stopping, is aligned.
And this proactive, documented fix demonstrates due diligence.
And it severely undercuts the contractor's ability to leverage ambiguities later.
But the mark of a truly professional firm isn't just fixing the error.
It's fixing the system that allowed the error to happen in the first place.
This is the institutional fix, back-checking your standard system.
That late discovery at 90% CDs is irrefutable evidence of a quality system failure upstream, probably in the DD or early CD phases.
So you have to identify the missing QA steps.
You do. The analysis points out 3 key failures here.
First, a specific missing check.
The DD checklist clearly lacked a granular line item specifying verified door swing does not conflict with required clear egress path at convergence points. It was too generic.
Second, the project's internal QC plan failed.
It failed by not mandating a scheduled RCP versus life safety overlay review check during early CD production. If that check had been mandatory, the ceiling discontinuity would have been flagged at 60% CDs when it was cheap and easy to fix.
And third, The general concept of rated assembly continuity was not mandated as a formal, specific review gate earlier in the CD process.
It was just assumed that the team would handle it, but the system failed to enforce it.
So the institutional fix is the highest form of learning.
It is. The firm must immediately update its core QA structure based on this failure. They need to update the DD checklist with specific language about door swings at egress convergence points.
And update the CD checklist with a mandatory check for rated wall sealing continuity and fire stopping penetration strategy.
And critically, update the peer review agenda template to mandate a life safety overlays exhibit for every single major milestone review. This system change prevents the same error from recurring on 10 subsequent projects.
This directly ties into the mindset required for practice management. When a scenario asks what the architect should do next when a quality issue is found late.
The best answer is always the one that documents the finding, coordinates the fix immediately, and issues a clear revision path.
While simultaneously investigating how to prevent it systemically in the future.
Yes. And the principles we've just established, systemic quality, mandatory checks, meticulous documentation, they're not just good management.
They're foundational to professional practice.
They are. And they represent the highest level of defensibility in any legal forum. The rationales provided by KING-KAMBUF just vividly illustrate this necessity.
So let's talk about defensibility under a claim. If a claim arises concerning omissions or coordination errors, what is the single best approach to support the firm's argument that they exercise due care and due diligence?
It is entirely about documented process. We know the wrong responses are relying on verbal instructions, or worse, deleting old red lines or review records.
That sounds like destroying evidence.
It is. The single correct answer is always providing documented review logs and resolved comment tracking. You have to be able to demonstrate that the accessibility peer review happened on Tuesday.
The comments were logged on Wednesday.
Ownership was assigned and resolution was implemented by Friday, and the changes were incorporated and noted. You prove you followed the standard of care by providing the chronological evidence of your systematic procedure.
Due diligence is the process, the logs. Due care is proving you met the standard, the result.
Exactly.
This links directly to the issue of mandatory gates, especially in the scenario with a PM who consistently skips peer reviews to save fee and boost project profit.
Only for that action to result in frequent addenda and significant client dissatisfaction later.
It pits individual ambition against firm risk.
This is a textbook example of a risk manager's nightmare. Allowing this behavior is unethical and financially reckless because the firm is externalizing its QC costs onto the client through addenda.
And increasing its E&O exposure.
Massively. The firm cannot tolerate a rogue PM overriding the firm's internal standard. The most appropriate firm action is to make peer reviews mandatory gates tied directly to project authorization and billing milestones.
So if the DD review isn't signed off by the QA/QC lead,
the PM doesn't get authorization to proceed to the CD phase or build a client for the next phase. This changes the system to enforce quality, and it removes the decision from the individual PM's discretion.
and we often hear the rebuttal from senior staff, right? The senior principal who dismisses the need for checklists, arguing, we don't need checklists. Our staff are seasoned veterans and experienced.
This just betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of systemic risk. Experience is invaluable, but it is not a system, and it is prone to the same human failures under stress.
So what's the correct professional response?
You explain that checklists are essential precisely because they reduce variance and protect the firm under deadline pressure. Checklists standardize the lowest common denominator.
Meaning, they ensure that even the most experienced PA, when they're stressed and working late, doesn't forget that critical cross-reference or fire-stopping detail.
Exactly. It ensures that quality remains consistently high, regardless of the individual designer's personality, their workload, or their stress level that day.
Okay, let's tackle the gray area scenario that tests the ethical obligations of the firm, because this is where public welfare and the law supersede commercial expediency.
This happens constantly. The client demands final CDs be issued today to maintain the bid schedule.
But the internal peer reviewer flagged a verifiable, unresolved accessibility concern.
And the PM, under pressure, argues it's minor, the building permit reviewers will catch it, we'll fix it later.
So what is the mandatory standard of care and ethical response? The firm is torn between a client relationship and their professional duty.
The firm's legal and ethical obligation to protect public welfare and safety, which includes accessibility, must override the deadline and the client's commercial demand.
There's no gray area.
There is no gray area. The firm cannot knowingly issue documents that contain an unresolved life safety or accessibility risk just to meet a date.
So what do you do?
You must escalate internally immediately to the QA/QC lead or a principal. You document the peer reviewer's concern clearly, and then you present the client with the solution.
Either a defined short delay to resolve the issue before issuance.
Or a clear, formal advisory note stating that the firm cannot proceed due to the standard of care obligation.
Because relying on the permit reviewer to catch your mistakes is a form of malpractice.
It is shifting your legal responsibility to a third party. If you knew about the flaw and issued the document anyway, you are fully liable for that flaw, regardless of what the jurisdiction does or doesn't catch.
And the client trust is destroyed.
Completely. When they find out you knowingly submitted faulty work, the ethical response requires transparency, adherence to the standard of care, and a willingness to accept a minor schedule disruption to avoid catastrophic legal and financial exposure down the line. So in synthesizing this entire deep dive, I think the overarching lesson from successful practices like KING-KAMBUF is this. If you are looking for long-term stability, higher profitability, and reduced stress,
Which we all are.
always look for answers and solutions that change systems, not just the ones that require staff to work harder or be more careful.
And that system has 4 key qualities that define the best professional practices. The qualities we should look for in every internal decision.
They are, number 1, documented, proving you have evidence of a rigorous process. 2, repeatable firm-wide, so quality is an organizational asset, not dependent on a single personality.
3, prevention-focused.
Meaning you invested early in QA to avoid the expensive fix later with QC. And 4, defensible under a claim, proving you met or exceeded the standard of care by following your own systematic procedures.
And the successful integration of templates, gates, and peer reviews is the practical application of these 4 qualities.
Exactly.
Excellent synthesis. For you, the listener, here is the if you remember nothing else summary, and it's focused on actionable change that you can implement today.
The takeaways.
Number 1, standardize the floor. Use templates to set the minimum acceptable content level. And go beyond title blocks. Standardize your code analysis worksheet and your Division 01 procedural language immediately.
Do that tomorrow.
Number 2, gate the milestones, make peer review mandatory, and tie it to billing authorization. No project should move from DD to CD until the previous review checks are signed off by the QA/QC lead.
Hold the line.
3, fresh eyes beat heroics. Implement structured, time-boxed, role-based peer review. And remember, the $1,200 investment in prevention is always cheaper, less stressful, and more effective than the $9,000 cost of panicked rework and inevitable addenda.
It's just good business.
And number 4, document the process. Your review logs and your comment resolution tracking are not just administrative tasks. They are your primary form of risk management and your best defense in court.
They're your shield.
So, as you finish this deep dive, take this knowledge and apply it immediately. Start tracking the time your project teams spend on rework and addenda resolution. I bet it's more than you think.
It always is.
Then, implement the system. Draft a 3-stage checklist, SD, DD, CD, focusing specifically on life safety, accessibility, and critical coordination points. Create a formal peer review agenda template that is strictly time-boxed and requires mandatory role-based sign-off.
And then run the numbers.
Then run the numbers. If you can prove that implementing a disciplined $1,200 QA/QC investment generates that $6,300 net profit per project in your own practice.
Quality assurance immediately becomes the most critical profit center in your firm. And that is the change in mindset that defines a high-functioning practice.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.